But it was, I later studied because then I later wrote a book about our journey. But I found out by talking to the hotline, the Danish Cancer Society has a hotline, and this amazing psychologist, she was helping me not only to cope in the beginning when I was in the shock phase, but also later on with my book. And she said that children down to the age of, I think, 1.5 years can tell when something is not right. So it did affect the children. And what I had to do in the midst of my own sadness, because I didn't know whether it was going to go this or that way. So I had to call my daughter's school, especially because my 13-year-old daughter is very sensitive. And I had to call her school teacher and explain, and the other teachers, just to let the teachers know that what we were going through in the family, in case my daughter broke down one day, and then they would know about it. And she actually did, and my mom would pick her up. So there's a lot that we had to do. So not only make sure that the kids were having their daily routines, that's very important in the midst of a storm or chaos or this going on in the family, make sure that they still go to school and have their routines. That was so important to us. And secondly, inform everyone around the kids and have a backup system. And as I went through my own shock phase, that was the first 4 or 5 days, we started to invite families and friends to help us and reach out to them. And my mom would cook and take care of Andy, that was only 2 years old, and just help with little things, while my husband was researching for the best doctors, hospitals, possible treatments, and calling everyone he was fighting for my life. He really was fighting for my life. And long story short, finally the hospital called me to the CT and MR. And I remember that day I was there, I went to the whole, all the tests, and then I came back home, and I don't remember, we had to wait a couple of days for the full picture, and my husband refused to wait. So he sat at the hospital the day they were supposed to call us, and there was no way he was going to wait for anyone to call us. He sat there waiting for the doctor, specific doctor that was going to give him the answer. He sat there and waited for him. And finally, at the end of the day, I remember that my husband called me from the hospital, and he said, they say it's reasonable news. I mean, it's reasonable news, which is good news. I mean, and I was like, oh, thank you. Maybe I have time enough to write a legacy book for my children. And it's not that I'm the most, friends and family would say I'm the most positive person, but I also knew that sometimes cancer takes children, So I was just making sure that I had time enough to plan to do my plan B, if you wanted to call it a plan B. And to me, that was kind of leaving a legacy, especially for Andy that would not remember me. And at the same time, I was hoping and praying down on my knees. I even carried a little piece of paper. And I grew up in the country, they call it the country without a God. It's not that we don't believe in God, we're just not very religious. But my faith was very important to me and became even more important. So I wrote a little note to God. I said, dear God, if I get a second chance, I promise to pay it forward to like-minded. And now I'm very personal, okay? I wore that little piece of paper in my bra for 2 years. And every day in my little altar that I created in my bedroom, I would be down on my knees praying for my survival. And whether I was going to survive or not, I just felt really good about doing at least what I could. And then again, I'm very spiritual, so I also said, and if that's not really my destiny, okay, I surrender, okay? But can you please let me have 3 months to prepare so I can write my legacy book? And that's what I did. I wrote the first book, If You Look at the Stars, I Shall Twinkle. And that's the place that my children and I agreed to meet. In case, because I was sick, we talked about death and dying. It just came up naturally, and we talked about what if I get hit by a bus, and things can happen. What do you think happens after death? And we had really good talks. And also, in case I would not survive, where would they want to live? Because the dilemma was that I was divorced, so the 3 children had another father. So I actually had to talk to my ex-husband, and we had to kind of figure it all out. And we did.